Air New Zealand is looking to furlough some of its cabin crew for 3 years or longer, with the incentive of being rehired first if and when the airline takes off after a massive downturn in the wake of COVID-19. It's in the process of laying off more than 1,300 cabin crew, 950 of them international, but it is offering some of them the opportunity to go on furlough, where their employment contract with the company is basically put on ice. Workers who choose that option don't get a redundancy payment up front, but could be among the first to be hired back if the airline takes off again. But some cabin crew feel they're being held to ransom, while the union says there could be a simpler, fairer way. It's kind of like being frozen mid-air, suspended animation of the employment kind. Here's Savage, Air2 Union's head of aviation.
Whether or not they go for it really just depends on the details of the scheme itself.
It's up for negotiation, but an Air New Zealand document obtained by Checkpoint, headed up COVID-19 furlough principles, cabin crew, lays out exactly what it's offering. The airline has collected more than $70 million in wage subsidies, and workers going into hibernation will be paid any of that subsidy attached to their jobs and work out a paid notice period. After that, though, they're on furlough. They must exhaust any and all existing leave at the start. The pay stops after that. And there is no redundancy payment at this stage. More on that later. Here's an extract from the furlough principles document.
The total period of furlough is up to 3 years from the end of the notice period. The furlough period may be extended by agreement between Air New Zealand and the employee.
Interestingly, the furlough is 3 years and potentially beyond, longer than the 2 years Air New Zealand is now predicting it will be before the airline could be back at 70% of its pre-COVID long-haul business. Let's get back to the detail.
The employee's employment with Air New Zealand is in effect frozen, so they will not accrue further entitlements under their employment agreement, such as annual leave, annual pay steps, sick leave, superannuation.
But Air New Zealand will count the time on furlough as continuous when it comes to calculating the likes of long service leave. The hibernating crew can bail on the agreement at any time, no notice required, and they'll be paid redundancy calculated prior to furlough. Same for Air New Zealand if it decides to pull the pin during or at the end of the furlough period, if its trajectory is not upwards. But some people simply can't afford to wait, according to Savage.
Not everyone is in a position where they can forego a redundancy check, and there are many people who don't think it's really worth waiting, given that the airline, particularly for international cabin crew, is saying that it may be a number of years before they're able to rehire people.
So why hang in there for what undoubtedly is going to be one bumpy ride? The document spells it out.
Recall opportunities will be given to those on furlough before external offers of employment are made, including to redundant former employees, and in accordance with the recall list.
For some crews, their spot on the recall list is based on length of service with the company. But there are different crew contracts, so conditions vary too. But preferential rehiring based on whether you take furlough grates on some cabin crew. This worker's comments are revoiced to protect their identity.
Redundancy payments are there for a reason and must not be held ransom to save money for the company.
The company could develop a scheme that simply said, we will prioritise all ex-employees and we will make sure that those people have the most simplest way of coming back into Air New Zealand because we value them as employees.
Furloughed staff taken back during any reboot will return to usual hours on the terms and conditions of their employment agreement pre-COVID-19 or the collective contract if they are party to it. Cabin crew on frozen contracts can still access staff travel and they're able to get another job while hibernating. But there is a kicker. They can't work for another airline or an Air New Zealand competitor. Savage from Air2 Union again.
At the moment, the company is driven largely by the need for money. You know, as one executive said to me, cash is king. And what we're seeing at Air New Zealand is a company that is hell-bent on saving as much money as they can, on getting terms and conditions that suit them and on arrangements that suit them. And that's the problem we face at the moment.
Cabin crew tell Checkpoint the redundancy notices have been served, but the union says it could be several weeks before the details are thrashed out.